Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. On the programme this week, motorists giving cyclists enough room when overtaking, cannabis for medicinal use, and a clampdown on using mobile phones while driving were all up for discussion. Here's Stu Peters.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
Are mixed messages and alternative views about the side effects of them putting people off taking prescription medication. After lots of controversy, statins have now been declared safe and effective. A major review has been carried out by the Lancet Medical Journal looking into the drugs, which apparently reduce cholesterol and prevent heart disease. It's found potential side effects have been exaggerated by unreliable studies. Should possible side effects be made clearer from the outset? Are mixed messages about some medications putting people off taking what's prescribed? Or will there always be uncertainty over any long-term pharmaceutical use? Let's go to the lines. We've got Gillian on. Hello, Gillian.
Yes, I've been on statins for a long time, and they checked out everything all right. I never ever mentioned about aches in my limbs or having very bad cramp early hours of the morning. So I saw a different doctor, and she changed me to another one.
A different brand, yeah.
A different brand, yes. And then I took those for a while. Took those for quite a while, and I still got the same. I didn't go back. Then I decided, I know I'll probably get hung for it, but I stopped taking them. And I felt a lot better. The cramps stopped in my legs. This was at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, which was terrible.
Yeah.
And I decided to, I stopped them. Then when I heard the news a couple of days ago that all this message about they're okay and this, that, the other, I thought, right, I'll go back and try them again.
Yeah.
And blow me down, that night, Stu, I had the bad cramps again and the aching limbs at early hours of the morning.
Right, okay.
So I stopped taking
them. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, cramp's a horrible thing. In your leg, is this, the cramp?
Yes, it sounds awful like that. And right in my leg and also in my groin.
Yeah, I mean, that thing in your leg where you've got to jump out of bed and sort of hop about on one leg and stuff, it's horrible.
Hop about and stretch your leg, yes.
Oh, horrid, horrid.
Yes, that was horrid.
It might be one of those things, Jill, where it's just worth mentioning it to your doctor and just see whether or not there's maybe a different type again that they can try, or a smaller dose, or if you agree with this latest research, and I'm not a doctor and I'm sure you're not either, but I think we've got to trust the medical profession on things like this, certainly to an extent. And so if we trust them that these things really are good for us and are going to stop us dying prematurely, then you kind of need to have a go at it and try and find one that works for you, I would have thought.
Yes. As I say, sometime this month I do have to go for a checkup because I at the surgery because I'm a type 2 diabetic.
Right.
And
okay.
They send blood off and everything like that. So I will mention it.
Worth a go.
Mention it again.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff. Well, it's I'm sad that you're having side effects. Joy Mackle says that Stu, quinine stops the cramps. Right. It's not something that I suffer from often, but every now and then, maybe once or twice a year, I'll go through, 2 or 3 nights where I'll get leg cramps and things. Quinine, okay. I think it's probably because I'm dehydrated. I think that's the problem. Because as I'm getting older, if I drink too much before I go to bed, I'm up all night going to the loo. And so I tend not to drink so much before I go to bed. And I think that's probably making me dehydrated. I don't know. Maria called. I'm on statins. I've been for a long time. The doctor told me to ignore all the reports and I'm stuck with them. I've had no problems, but it might depend on the dosage. I'm on a fairly low dosage. Okie dokie. I felt like rubbish. I'm not going to use the word that you used, John. And stopped taking them too. Glad it's not just me. I'll feel good and take my chance, I think. Okay, well, don't tell me when it all goes wrong. How about rather than these, thin pills, just put less in you? What? We don't know. It's not that. It's not to make you get thin, statins. It's to keep your heart healthy, I think. Good. Stu, what did we do before these magical pills were invented? We just lived our lives without a second thought. We've become a nation of hypochondriacs. Pharmaceutical companies don't make cures, they make clients. Oh, I like that. That's a good line, that. Drink tonic water before bed, fluid and quinine in one glass, and it's a good hangover preventer too, and that's from an ex-soldier. Right, okay. I don't know if I'll ever be combat ready, but it's maybe worth a go. Let's go to the lines. We've got Howard on. Hello, Howard.
Just listen to the several people on there about the statins.
Yeah.
My wife was prescribed statins a couple of, 2-3 years ago after being ill. And she was getting, or still does, she stopped taking them for a little while, but the cramps left. But the pains in her legs, etc., were still there. So it could be arthritic or just age.
Yeah.
But as I say, she went back onto them again, and of course she gets the night cramps. I can hear her tromping around some nights trying to stop this, going to get somewhere cold. But as I was saying to Catherine, last year, by some miracle, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And at the doctor's, I got no information on what to do and why. And I only found out afterwards, by chance, that there was actually a diabetic or a nurse for diabetes within the surgery.
Yes.
So anyway, cut a long story short, I went back again afterwards, got some information from the diabetes centre at that Nobles Hospital, and the diabetic nurse just wiggled me toes a couple of times, and she said, "Oh, that's fine." She said, "I'll see you in November." And that was just after Christmas this year. So how, the pills, the amount of pills I was taking, they were doubled by the doctor.
Yeah.
So is this thing industry-led? Because diabetes at the moment seems to be the fashionable disease.
It does, and we've got John, who's one of our regular contributors on the programme, often phones up and says that he was diagnosed with diabetes and he's managed to do lifestyle changes and diets and things like that, and he's able to manage it that way. So I don't know whether, I couldn't possibly give medical advice, but maybe that's something to consider. I've got another friend who's been diagnosed recently with some sort of diabetes, I think a fairly mild version, and again, lifestyle changes, dropped a load of weight, feeling healthy as anything. Maybe there is a way.
My doctor said to me, he said, "You're not overweight," which, I'm not exactly fat, but I'm not a slim boy, Jim.
Sure, yeah.
But we eat healthy. There's no junk food in the house.
Right.
And neither one of us takes sugar. I know there's sugar in all sorts of things, but we don't actually physically, In fact, I had a friend up for a cup of tea yesterday, and we had no sugar to give him this tea.
Quinine is what people are suggesting on the programme today if your wife suffers from the night cramps.
There used to be a lady downside of us, and she swore by it.
Yeah.
Because originally it was for treating malaria, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. It's worth a go, though, isn't it, if your wife suffers on a regular basis from it?
Look for the one with the Indian tonic water.
Right.
I won't name the brand, but most companies do their own. But it does actually say quinine.
Yeah,
and she used to use this. She swore by it, what they term, something I don't know myself, restless legs.
Yeah. Worth a go, though, isn't it?
Just a glass of this going to bed.
Yeah.
But as I said before is this an industry-led? Because we've had all sorts of new pills, new concoctions, and everything coming out. And a pharmaceutical trade, it's a massive trade.
It is.
And they have a huge influence on doctors, hospitals, and otherwise.
Of course, yeah. I don't know. Somebody, I think it was Dee suggested that it might be, I don't. I prefer to trust the doctors. I don't know if I'm right or not to do that. Quick call from Norman. Hello, Norman.
Just about cramps.
Yes.
The best tablet you can take is a vitamin D3.
Oh, D3.
D3. Yes, your doctor will prescribe them.
Okay.
The tonic water is great, but make sure you don't get the diet ones.
Right.
Just get the proper, tonic water.
Yeah.
But that quinine sulfate is very good as well. But vitamin D3 is the best capsule you can get for leg cramps.
Brilliant, excellent. Oh, we're getting some good advice. Thanks for that, Norman.
The Nation Station. Manx Radio.
Would legalising cannabis for pain relief be something that you'd support? It's something that's being recommended across the water, according to the findings of a 7-month inquiry into drug reform. The all-party parliamentary group says there's strong enough evidence to persuade other countries to allow it for pain relief. It's concluded the drug works as a medicine for a number of conditions. Would legalising cannabis for medical purposes be a good idea, or could that lead to abuse of the rules? Tell us your thoughts on this. Aside from the genuine cases, I think a lot of the supporters think if they legalise cannabis for pain relief, they'll be able to walk down the street smoking a spliff and claim it's for the bad back. That won't happen. It'll likely be in tablet form, says Paul. The reason why cannabis cures everything is because it does, as the addiction specialist shares in pharmaceutical companies, says Anne. Good afternoon, Stuart. In a word, no. All this would appear to be is another attempt to get an illegal substance legalised. All this will do is to lead to any old dopehead complaining of pain and trying to prescribe to get cannabis prescribed. That from Eric. What a surprise, cannabis works. It's been used since Roman times, demonised by the US media and politicians in the 30s after the failure of alcohol prohibition due to its connection with the jazz clubs and the segregated black population. Right. It's an absolute travesty that it remains illegal in the UK when now it's proven to be beneficial. Parents who've moved state to treat their children in the US, where they use it for epilepsy as well. Legalise it now, says John. Thank you, John. Good. Getting some good points of view on this one, so don't be shy. Give me a call. That's what Ken's done. Let's have a word. Hello, Ken.
Strangely enough, there was an article in one of the Sunday papers about America. Not that we should always follow what America does, but there's 25 of the 50 American states have legalised cannabis for medical use.
Yeah.
And there's another 5 thinking about it. And
I think there are some states in America, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there are some states where you can use it for recreational purposes as well.
I think there's about 5, and there's another 5 thinking about it. But and of course, that's then they tax it then.
Yeah.
Get money for it. But I do think there's a sort of whole legal team behind legalising it for medical use, because people are employed to prosecute. It's a whole judicial system involved in, doing people for small amounts of cannabis.
Well,
it's absolutely ridiculous.
If only for that reason, surely the idea of legalising it would be a good one, because it'd just take it off the table, wouldn't it, if cannabis was legalised? Generally, if it was legalised.
Oh, yes, never smoked myself, so I wouldn't know, but it seems, a good idea. I don't know whether the Isle of Man can go ahead before the UK, I don't know.
I don't know. Well, like I said to Chris earlier when we were talking about it, I've seen far more articles that seem to be for it and to say that it would be a good thing if it was legalised, certainly for medicinal use, and other sites that have said, just decriminalise it completely anyway. Somebody can go into an off-licence and buy a cheap bottle of spirits and get absolutely, uselessly drunk, but they can't smoke a cigarette, a marijuana cigarette, which has got far less of an effect and it's far less dangerous. Why is that? So, if they can get some tax for it, then that would be another good reason, wouldn't it?
Yes. Unless, of course, we ban we don't have the smoking bit, but we have it in tablet or cookie, for that sort of form to try and get away, the argument, well, how do we know you're doing it legally?
Well, it's like the chap was saying in the interview earlier on, that they're working on a thing now where you just get the pain relief from it. You don't get any sort of a buzz, no sort of, euphoric feeling or any of those things that you probably get with cannabis. So, if that's the case, then people won't want to use it for recreational purposes, will they? If it's turned into just a drug.
Right, so let's crack on with it. If they find time in the legal framework in the next 5 years, that's it. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ken. Thanks for calling. Let's go to Malcolm, who's on line 3. Hello, Malcolm.
I thought I'd give it a ring, actually.
Good.
I'm going through cancer at the moment.
Ooh.
And I was in Clatterbridge for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I came across a lot of patients that were terminal that were taking cannabis, obviously illegally.
Yeah.
But I found it to be the only way of actually controlling the pain.
I've heard that, that it's really good for that.
And I mean, obviously they've gone through, some of them, years of treatment.
Yeah.
Had tried everything, and a lot of them, yes, it was a last resort. Quite a few of them felt, to some extent, guilty that they were having to do it underhand.
Sure.
And obviously there was other times where they couldn't get hold of the cannabis, so it meant they were going periods of time back in pain.
Yeah.
When you talk to them as well, they sort of explain to you that how the cannabis actually just targets the pain. I think you mentioned with the previous caller that it doesn't produce the feelings of euphoria, etc.
Yes.
And they all said the same, that it doesn't do that. It appears that the cannabis actually just targets the pain receptors.
Well, I mean, if it was only of benefit to people who are going through that, and like the professor of neurology that we heard first, Mike Barnes, he was saying that it's also good for the nausea often associated with chemotherapy, for example.
Exactly, they said exactly the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm on morphine.
Right.
That's what they're using to control my pain. Now, that does a similar thing in that it supposedly just targets the pain receptors, but there appears to be a problem with morphine that if you're on quite a strong dose and, for example, your pain levels go down, what the morphine then does is start the hallucinations because it's not just targeting the pain.
I see, yeah.
So you end up with the... start seeing things and things around the room move, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So that produces, I would say, very similar effects to possibly what cannabis does.
And I suppose
that's legal.
Yeah, and I suppose that if you're on morphine, you'd be a bit reluctant to maybe turn down your dose or to take less of it in case it brings the pain back as well.
It's a very difficult thing, and it's something I went through, that if you start reducing your dose, it can have very serious side effects.
I can
it's
believe
something
it.
you have to do gradually over a period of time.
Right.
So, my view is time to legalise. You see the people and what they're going through. If that is going to give them a quality of life, should we be stopping them from having that?
Absolutely not. Any relief at all has got to be a good thing, hasn't it?
Yes.
Thanks for calling, Malcolm. It's lovely talking to you again.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Bye-bye. There you go. That was Malcolm. And I have osteoarthritis in my lower back. I grew and used cannabis for pain relief to ease the persistent discomfort of nerve damage, and now have a criminal record, despite proving the plants were not for criminal gain, but for medicinal purpose. Well, you can't have been surprised at that. I mean, it's it does seem like a sad outcome, but you can't have been surprised because it is an illegal substance. So, no matter what you say that you used it for, it was always going to end up with a prosecution, I would have thought. Good afternoon, Manx Radio. Good afternoon. I believe that cannabis should be used for medicinal purposes, as its multiple effects can benefit many varied people. I understand the people who want to keep it strictly illegal, but I'm more in favour of its use in medicine. The cannabinoids and THC levels in cannabis can hugely benefit those in need. For example, insomnia, MS, anxiety, and it neutralises brain receptors. As a sufferer of paranoid schizophrenia, it would hugely benefit those who have no real help in medicine. Thank you very much indeed for getting in touch. Any medicine has to be approved from NICE before its use. If they consider it worthwhile, then it should be available, says Tom. Stu, remember that doctors used to advocate smoking cigarettes, and indeed also advertise different brands. Would they do so now? Kind regards from John in Farm Hill. No, they wouldn't now. I had Crohn's and colitis first 16 years, and it nearly killed me. And having a number of surgeries, I've read a lot over the years, and its healing quality is far greater for pain relief and other forms of illnesses. Give people a card to say that they've got an illness so that they can use it or not, says Steve. Robin Peel called. I think it's a dangerous route to go down, he says. A family member of mine got cannabis psychosis and he's been paranoid ever since. There are a lot of young people that happens to. It does the damage at a young age. So I think it would be dangerous to go down that route. The trouble with cannabis and the other stuff they smoke now is that it's super strength. That's the trouble, Stu, says Dave. Hat off to you for being so open about this taboo subject on Manx Radio. It needs to be legalised. Alcohol is the problem, says Ian. The THC levels actually shut off the receptors in the brain that recognise pain, while the cannabinoids target the affected areas. Oh, I could say cannabinoids after all. If it can be controlled well enough, then cannabis should be legalised. That's from Tom in Ramsey. Thank you, Tom. Surely if it was legalised, it would have to be monitored through the prescriber. Who has what, how much and when, says Jay. Why don't people listen? This is not a proposal to licence spliffs. The drug will be in tablet form with no wacky elements, says Sue. Right, you tell them, Sue. Hello, Stu. My sister contracted MS at age 29. She suffered from pain and seizures on a regular basis. Once when we had taken her out for dinner and the whole table was turned up Terribly embarrassing for her. Those who are against cannabis obviously have never witnessed such an appalling illness firsthand. Cannabis was mentioned at the time, but who knew where to get it? She died at 52 6 years ago, most hideous way to go. I wish that she could have obtained it. Rob says, if we're talking about laws in America, they have the right to bear arms, which was brought in after the Civil War. It's outdated, no longer represents what it was intended to. I think it would be opening Pandora's box to allow cannabis to be sold freely. I don't think it would be. It would be on prescription, Rob. I've just read an article called Is It a War on Drugs or a War on Cheap Medicine, says Joan. Interesting.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Do events, high-profile events, help to raise awareness of just what is available when it comes to local produce? The annual Isle of Man Food and Drink Festival takes place this weekend, with organisers hoping to build on last year's success, as we just heard in the news. More than 7,000 people visited the event in 2015, a record-equalling number. Do events like the Food and Drink Festival encourage you to try more local produce? Is it important that what's on offer in the Isle of Man is showcased in this way? Or is it unlikely to change your shopping habits when it comes to food either way? And just a thought, should we concentrate resources more maybe on marketing Manx produce outside the Isle of Man to export markets? First one that's come in, I would have thought it would be better to run this event in the summer. You'd get a lot more people. Well, when that came in, I thought, hang on a minute, today is going to be the hottest day of the year. So it's still, is it still summer? I'm never sure when the seasons change. I think it might still effectively be summer, or is it autumn now? I don't know. Text it. I wonder if this is just part of a text, if I've only got half the message. It's from Dave, who's one of our regulars. He says, from across the British Isles to spread the word how good our stuff is. What from across the British Isles? That's the question. It looks like I've only got part of the message there. Stu, this is from Michael, the Welbeck, who's always very supportive of my great ideas. Let's see what we've got here. TT Food Festival. Stu, 1, nobody would have time. 2, no accommodation for people visiting. And 3, traffic would make it very difficult. Farmers expect us to buy local, but they're shipping their cattle away, so why should I support them getting their countryside care money? Not interested in their meat plant, says Chris. Dearest bread in the supermarket, dearest meat in the supermarket, dearest milk in the supermarket. Why? I'm not an economist. I would suggest it's probably down to economies of scale, in that it costs more to run a Manx farm than it would do a farm in, say, Lancashire. And you've only got a finite market in the Isle of Man for your produce, whereas if you were in Lancashire, for example, you could be part of some sort of a collective scheme or whatever that was selling to millions of people throughout the north of England at least. So I think it's economies of scale, but it's a comment that we get quite a lot. The Isle of Man already does showcase its great food at TT. Chips, cheese and gravy from many an establishment, and the Manx Hog, a.k.a. the Johnny Stubbleburger from down at Bushes. More of a must than kippers these days, says Rich. Right then. You could do a food programme all of your own, couldn't you, Rich, really? Text here, Oakle's beer is cheaper in Liverpool. I've got another comment about, and it's just disappeared off me. What's it saying? Don't forget that we won lots of great taste awards for meat, flour, beer, ice cream, Manx lamb, vodka and Manx cider. Yes, I know that we do seem to win a lot of awards for things like that. Used to live in Cheshire, and my cousin had a pet shop in Liverpool. Mother used to go to the local butchers and couldn't get over the low prices. It's a regional effect. Yeah, and more competition, no two ways about it. The Isle of Man does suffer an awful lot from a lack of competition. That's because we got such a small local market that, two people probably couldn't compete in a lot of areas. I think that was the case in the shipping lines, wasn't it, years ago? The only objection is having to pay an entrance fee in order to spend money, and that's from Jack. Okay, I can see that, I suppose. I suppose the organisers have got to pay the costs of the venue and all that, so the entrance fee, I suppose, covers that, if maybe the cost of the stands or the stalls doesn't. I don't know. I don't know what the finances are of it.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast, featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Are attitudes to using handheld mobile phones behind the wheel relaxing? The RAC says an alarming rise in the use of mobiles while driving is the biggest safety risk to motorists. Its research across the water has found 31% of drivers admit to using their phones behind the wheel. That compares with just 8% back in 2014. Frightening. 14% of motorists even owned up to taking photographs or videos while driving. Is using a handheld phone while behind the wheel becoming more prevalent? Is the increasing dependence on technology, mobile phones in particular, leading to more people reaching for the phones while doing pretty much everything? Or are attitudes different here in the Isle of Man? Stu... This is from Mark, who says, give me a minute to get together while Nurse helps me out with bath chair onto my soapbox. OK, my point about mobile phone use in cars isn't about use while driving, although that is particularly stupid, of course. The thing that grinds my gears are the people who pull over to answer the phone in the most stupid places. As if that phone call is the most important thing on earth. Well, it might be, you don't know. The rest of the world around them is forced to stop as so many times traffic can't get past them. They sit in the car on the phone pretending to be oblivious to the congestion that they're causing. This obstruction in itself can lead to accidents, of course. No call is so important that the person can't wait until they get to a lay-by and ring the person back. Well, yes, it might be a withheld number. It might be the lottery people and they might not give the number. And then you've lost £25 million, Mark. We've coped for a long time without these things up until 20 years ago. And breath, says Mark. Long believed that use of mobile phones in cars has been demonised out of all proportion. If we're worried about being distracted, we should ban children, passengers, radios from cars, street-side advertising, drink and drugs testing should be mandatory. Absolutely. If so many are ignoring this law, then maybe it isn't the right law. Mobiles are here to stay, says Jane. Stu, I think it's just as dangerous when drivers suddenly stop, often on double white lines or other restricted areas. Society seems to be addicted to mobile phones and computers. I simply don't understand the attraction when these gadgets take control of their lives, says Neil. Frank's in no doubt at all. Hey boy, make it a minimum £1,000 fine and a 21-day ban. That'll get the message across. Mobile phone use while driving kills. Facts. Says Frank. It's a while since we've had a fact from Frank. It's easy. A week in prison, says Dave. Stop making excuses. There's no excuse. End of story. Right then. I bet the Bobbies will be keeping an eye on you, Stu. Well, they usually provide me with sort of police outriders when I've got the flags up on the car. I usually get motorbike escorts. Stu, there are laws which deal with bad driving regardless of mobile phone use. For example, driving without due care and attention or dangerous driving, says David H. Yep. Robin Peel called. My mobile phone, I couldn't do without it. It lets me get out and about and have some independence. If I get into trouble, I can just call my wife. For me, it's essential. I couldn't do without it. There you go. That's the other side of the coin then, isn't it? But I mean, I know that Rob wouldn't use the if he was driving, I know that he wouldn't use the mobile phone behind the wheel, but it's more, you know, as far as cars are concerned, Rob, rather than just mobile phones, good or bad. Take the phone off them, says somebody else. People, even in the street, on mobile phones are a problem. Yes, they are. They just walk on, virtually knocking older people over, then just saying sorry and walking on. Some of them don't even do that. I think they should stop to answer the phone. Yes. I think that would be a polite thing to do. Use of a mobile is not unlawful if stuck in traffic. Really? That surprises me. Use of a mobile is not unlawful if stuck in traffic. That means stuck and not driving. Yeah, but I mean, if you... What's the actual wording? Because I bet it's, you know, whilst in control of a vehicle. And we know that you can be done for drink driving, even if you're sitting in a car park of a pub somewhere with the keys in the ignition and the engine not necessarily started. You can still be done for drink driving, can't you? So I'm not convinced by that. Use of any of the mobile device's features is the same as using the mobile phone, whether speaking on it or not, says Bob in Peel. OK, Bob, well, I mean, for now I'll defer to your greater knowledge on that, but certainly the first part of it surprises me. An answer to the problem is mobile phone providers should provide a divert to message service. I think most of them do, don't they? Nothing worse than driving and having a fag when the phone rings. I have to tell my child to hold the steering wheel. Good one, Roderick. Thank you very much indeed. More people die from pulling over in stupid places, says one of our contributors. Equally intrusive is the rule of wearing seatbelts. It should be up to us as individuals. We all know the risks. I got a severe telling off about that a few years ago. And I was stopped in traffic, but I didn't have my seatbelt on. And got pulled over by the bobbies. Howard called. He says, Stu, you keep saying about phone calls being important, but it's the law that you don't use them in the car. Nothing is worth the loss of human life. It's caused major accidents across where somebody is being killed. The call was all about something unimportant. Why is it so difficult to work out that it's not talking into a phone that causes the problem? It's if it was hands-free. If it was, hands-free systems would be illegal. It's the physical holding of the phone while talking, or even worse, texting. Well, texting is crazy. It causes accidents, which is why the law refers to failure to control the vehicle. Far too many people, from pedestrians to cyclists, are killed while the drivers are holding a phone in one hand and the wheel with the other, therefore both distracted and not in full control. And if texting, not even looking, just read the papers. If people think their business is more important than somebody else's life, well... That from Andrew, quite cross about the whole thing. Hey boy, I watched a TV programme where an idiot driving a wagon drove over a 22-year-old girl's car on a motorway hard shoulder. Devastating effect on a family, witnesses, let alone the copper delivering the deathogram, was heart-wrenching. Even you can't defend that. No, I wouldn't dream of defending it, Frank. Basically, anybody that drives a wagon down the hard shoulder into a car that's broken down, no, I wouldn't defend that for a second. But is it only because the guy was using a mobile phone? Because accidents like that happen because of people nodding off behind the wheel because they work too long. It's not just the people on phones while driving, it's the people that have the dog on the lap while they're driving around. Something should be done. They have to be more distracting and dangerous, especially if it's jumping around, says Paul. Yeah, you sometimes see that, people driving along with dogs, if not on the laps, then in the front seat with its head out the window. Common sense would sort it out. There are more important things going on, says Jane. Maybe, yeah. It's certainly worth discussing this, isn't it? Because just from the postbox that we've had on it so far, there are two sides to the discussion. But I just worry that we're getting to that state now with society where we jump on anything that is a perceived threat. And I just wonder whether or not we're always right about it, whether or not these things that we perceive to be threats, whether or not they really are. Just a thought. On a lighter note, says Andrew, I said was getting a bit cross earlier on. On a lighter note, I've agreed with Frank. Scary. Fact. Thank you, Andrew. Well, Frank sent me another one now. Hey, boy, you're defending mobile use while driving. I'm not. I'm merely debating it. I'm just discussing it. I'm just asking questions about whether or not the law is a good law, and whether or not using a mobile phone is the danger that we've all been sort of led to believe that it is. I'm asking the question. I'm not defending it. I wonder, and God forbid, how you'd feel if something happened to somebody close to you. I'd be devastated if anything happened to anybody close to me, whatever the reason. Think about it, says Frank. I don't need to think about it, Frank. I know exactly how I feel about it. What's this? In the UK Daily newspaper today, it comments on accidents when using mobiles. In 2014, 492 accidents were blamed on phone use, 21 people killed and 84 suffering serious injuries. Please don't use the phone in the car, says Norman. OK, so 2014, 492 accidents were blamed on phone use, 21 people killed, 84 suffering serious injuries. Well, significant, but I'd still like to see that on a league table of accident causes, I think, before I was convinced that the law that we've got is the right law. And that's not me saying that people should use mobile phones in the car. Far from it.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Would you like to see more action taken against drivers who pass cyclists too closely when overtaking on Manx roads? Police across the water in the West Midlands have become the first to actively target drivers who don't leave enough room between themselves and the cyclist they pass. The trial involves an officer on a bike alerting a patrol car if they've been passed dangerously. 38 motorists have been prosecuted so far. Should there be a more robust response to motorists who don't give cyclists the required room when overtaking? Would you like to see more done to raise awareness about the safe overtaking of cyclists? Or are people well aware of the rules? And do you have any problems with cyclists themselves? Talking about cyclists, the first thing to do is to get a cyclist to pass a test to show competence to be on the road. Aha! Right, okay, well, there's a twist on the story. But, yes, what do you think about this? Do you think that it's right for the police in the UK to have this campaign? Hey, boy, this 1.5 metre allowance for cyclists, is that in a singular cyclist or the three abreast or even the Sunday morning peloton? Questions from Frank. Stu, what's the rule on cyclists side by side on the road? Ah, there you go. Unless they're in groups of 4 or more, I blast the horn at the motorcyclists are more obedient, and at least we pay road tax for our machines. That's from Kev. Well, I couldn't possibly comment on that, Kev. What about cyclists 3 abreast? Surely this is an issue that needs to be addressed also. Yes, it does. They shouldn't be doing that. They shouldn't be riding 3 abreast. Cyclists shouldn't be allowed to ride in a big pack, say 2 maximum, and not so close to the 2 in front, because when there is 20 in a pack spread out on a long line, how do they expect somebody in a big Arctic or slow accelerating vehicle to get past safely and quickly? They don't do themselves any favours over here. May be true, but it's a very sociable thing, apparently, cycling. So, and the fact is, I've heard the argument in the past that if you've got 4 of them riding 2 abreast, so a little group of 4 of them, they're still only taking up the same amount of real estate on the roads as a car would, and you need to give them that sort of width. I would suggest the idea of a 1.5 metre space for cyclists now means that on many Manx roads that you can't overtake 2 cyclists riding abreast, or they shouldn't be riding 2 abreast if the road's too narrow, is my understanding. I'd like to see the law changed so that cyclists must be single file. I believe the highway code allows for 2 abreast. Also a maximum of 2 in convoy. Any more than that, and cyclists should have to leave enough of a gap for a car to pull in so they can overtake 2 at a time. The situation of dozens of cyclists cycling as a group using the whole lane is dangerous and must stop. You might have guessed, but I don't own a bicycle. Hi, Stu. Went to overtake a cyclist the other day. The problem was, by the time I got out of the car and got my tape measure set up, he was about half a mile down the road. Tish, thank you. Well, 1.5 metres it seems to be the guidance from the UK. 1.5 metres is about, 5 feet? So the way to think about this is, are you allowing a Kylie Minogue between you and the bicyclist, is the question. And that measure of distance, you could call it a Kylie or a Minogue, so that when you go to court and they say you were a bit too close. No, I was a good Minogue away, Your Honour. So, that's maybe the way to think about it. It works for me anyway. Nearly hit a bike under trees, which caused a flickering light effect on the road. The cyclist was dressed all in black and no helmet. They should be insured also. If they cause an accident, it's the car driver who has to pay, says Mike. Seems to be the case, Mike, yeah. Some of the sights I see in Lycra are enough to put anybody off their concentration while driving, says Cliffy. Yes, unfortunately that's something that has passed me by, the desire to get dressed up in tight Lycra, certainly out in public. UK police are right, time to start prosecuting some of these inconsiderate cyclists. Oh, also cyclists should be made to have insurance like motorbikes or cars. They cause accidents and damage too, says Joe. Right, I think it's more motorists that are being prosecuted across rather than the cyclists. One of the worst, these rules and regulations, Highway Code says it's for all road users. You should allow something like 1.5 metres or a car's width is the way that they have it in the Highway Code from any sort of vulnerable road user. So that includes motorbikes. Apparently. What else? UK police. One of the worst problems I see is motorists overtaking cyclists on blind bends, putting themselves in conflict with oncoming traffic, potentially at high speed. See this almost every day, says John. Nobody walks anymore. Cycle on pavements. Keep the lycra-clad brigade off the road during the rush hour. Do we have to keep that far wide of a cycle lane? That'll be fun on Peel Road. Well, you have to keep that far away from a cyclist. It's not the road, it's the cyclist, isn't it? If cyclist causes accident, who pays insurance, says Alex. Well, I don't know. If they drive into your car, then the chances are that they're not insured against that. But I expect you could probably take a private action against them if they've damaged your vehicle by being careless or whatever. I suppose you can prosecute them privately, or certainly go after them for damages. I wonder how many of these anti-cyclists are overweight drains on the NHS. Well, okay. One thing I would say about this is that whenever we talk about cyclists, we get people who are very pro-cycling, people who are very against cycling. What we've got to remember is that 1%, less than 1% of the world's population owns 99% of the world, or more than 99% of the world. And, I think that these lizard people who are sitting there, the Illuminati are sitting there, trying to give us things to fight amongst ourselves about. And I think this is just another of those. I don't care about cyclists. If I come round a corner and there's a big peloton of cyclists there, then it can be a little bit irritating, I suppose, if I've got to sit there for a while, but it's never that long. What irritates me more is that if I come up behind a group of cyclists, behind another vehicle, and that vehicle stops virtually until the cyclists are miles away, or until they can go right on the far side of the road, giving like 2 or 3 metres separation. That I find quite irritating. But, we've got to learn to live and let live, surely, about these things. Otherwise, we're playing into the hands of our overlords and masters. Conspiracy theory for a Friday for you. Cyclists, pass as close as you can, give them a blast of the washer jets as you go by. But I couldn't possibly suggest that that's a good idea. Get them off the road altogether, blot on the landscape, says Kev. OK, well, I think you just need to come down off the fence, Kev, to be honest. If you look at a cyclist and just imagine the bike and rider falling sideways, then I reckon you have about the right distance to allow for passing. No need to involve Kylie, says Michael. Au contraire, Michael, there's always a reason to involve Kylie. Stu, while heading to work at 5 o'clock this morning, I nearly knocked a cyclist off his bike. No lights and dark clothing. What an idiot. Well, to be honest, some people just don't help themselves, do they? Afternoon, Stu, don't see cyclists on UK motorways. No, they're not allowed, are they? So why are they allowed on the mountain road 2 abreast most of the time, and it's only a matter of time before one gets wiped out? That's Gary and Ramsey, who says also that they're a pain in the bottom. Well, I think that's probably a valid point, yes. Maybe we ought to make it so that they can't do the mountain, because that is probably the fastest road in the island, isn't it? And de-restricted as well for most of it. So yeah, maybe that same logic ought to apply there. Penny farthings and bone shakers, I would agree not to go too close, but modern bikes today are ridden at some pace. Please can't catch people using mobile phones. What a waste of time messing with something like this. That from Colin. Hi Bob, says this text. Bob? But 9 years I've been doing this programme. Bob's done it a few times when I've been on holiday, and that's not been that often. I'm in full support of the police doing something like this over here. I was in a close shave with an inconsiderate car driver up the north of the island 2 weeks ago. OK, fine. Stu, have you noticed how few lady cyclists there are these days? I hadn't noticed that. But Brian says, I can't remember the last time I admired a shapely derriere. What do they call it? Well, they probably call it a seat in cycling terms. I don't know. I've not noticed particularly. What are you doing looking at ladies' bottoms on bicycles? I always go out cycling on my own so as not to upset car drivers. I find nearly all give me lots of space when passing, and I always give a little wave of appreciation. You see, that's the way it should be. That's the way we're all there using the same bits of roads, and a little bit of appreciation, a little bit of give and take. That's all it takes. I always acknowledge, if somebody allows me out or whatever, I always acknowledge, and it's amazing, coming up and down Head Road here, quite often going back down Head Road, going back down Head Road after I've finished here, I've got the right of way because all the cars are parked on the other side of the road. Quite often you get somebody that'll come flying up the hill there on my side of the road, and I'll pull over to let them through, and you don't get any appreciation at all. Very, very irritating that, but if we all sort of appreciate each other, then that's lovely. Back to the text. I must admit that when I'm driving, I come across a group of cyclists using all the carriageway on a straight road isn't as bad. I develop road rage as well. No consideration for anyone but themselves, says Ian. P.S. I pay road tax on 3 other vehicles. Good man. Most dangerous road is Peel Road. That green tarmac is a cycle path. Yes, I think it is a cycle path, yeah. I don't quite understand the cut of your jib on that one. Let's go to the lines. We've got Peter on. Hello, Peter.
Yes, I used to ride a bike and still would if I got one, and I'm all for cyclists getting on the road. I emphasise that because there is a culture whereby it seems that pedestrians are supposed to walk on the road here because there's so many. It's more dangerous on the pavement. You get cyclists coming up at considerable speed behind you.
Yeah.
Windsor Road is notorious for it. Bucks Road. Really, Woodburn Road as well. Yeah. I was crossing by Woodburn Road where the traffic lights are, York Road, where you cross, when it tells you you're safe to cross, you don't expect something to come round the corner, but round the corner came a cyclist who quite clearly had gone past the red traffic lights and sort of swerved in front of me, going straight through, the right of way across the Pelican Crossing. They go down one-way streets.
Yep. I've seen it a lot on Athol Street. Somebody every day would ride the wrong way up Athol Street and then take the road down towards Shoresbrow car park, which is one way the other way. So they're going, into a no entry sign as well. So
they do
every day.
It's very, very. It is actually for the motorist. It is extremely hazardous as well as for the pedestrian. For example, where the Cool Methodist Church is, when you turn right there, going back towards Union Mills, that is a one-way lane. Now, one day I was just walking along there. A cyclist came behind who quite clearly had cycled down the one-way street. Now, that road, it's a very narrow track road. It's got quite a bend on it. You can't see round the corner. A motorist doesn't expect to have somebody coming head-on to him. It is not uncommon to see people cycle down there. So my thing is, yes, I'm all in favour of the enforcement of the rules on the road, but let's have them enforced, not only against the motorist, let's have them enforced against the cyclist.
Good. What do you think about that? What do you think about cyclists going the wrong way up footpaths and all the rest of it, not taking any notice of the rules of the road, which they want us to adhere to? Hey boy, conspiracies for the weekend. Just Google America's Dark Secrets, Denver Airport, illuminating facts, says Frank. I think I saw something on YouTube a couple of weeks ago about Denver Airport, yeah. There are good and bad motorists and cyclists. The trick is to be patient and tolerant. An angry driver is a bad driver, says David H. Yes, and a bicyclist who's got no regard at all for the rules, as Peter just said. I mean, they do the ride on pavements, against the traffic, the one-way streets the wrong way or whatever. So, that's a bad driver as well, isn't it? The fact is that they've not got a licence that can be taken off them is the difference. We've got John waiting to talk to us. Hello, John.
I think what a lot of people fail to accept is that the cyclist has the right of way. Now, admittedly, a lot of them do some very annoying things, but as the law stands, they have the right of way. But there is one very dangerous situation, which I've always thought down on Peel Road. If you're going down Peel Road and you want to turn left over Paul Rose Bridge,
yes,
you go into the left-hand lane.
Yeah.
To do that, you've
got to cross the cycle lane, yeah.
You have to go across the cycle lane.
Yeah.
Now, that's okay if you carefully check your near side mirror, but not everybody does.
Sure.
And I can see a potential problem there. Every time I go down there, I think, there's an accident waiting to happen here.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
It's just one of them things. It's been badly designed.
I think you might be right, John. OK, thank you very much for your call.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks as ever to everyone who took part in the programme. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays, or share your thoughts at any time on the Facebook page. That's Talking Heads with Stu Peters. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com, and the website's also where you'll get an update of what's being discussed on the programme each day. You can also keep up to date with that information by liking the Facebook page or following Stu Manx on Twitter. And if there's anything you think we should be talking about on the programme, why not let us know by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.